Well, first, that is the best description of my book that I've ever heard, and it really sums up my work. And actually, I'd like to thank Deepak for the first 20 minutes of my program. He's made very easy now, because that was essentially what I was going to say, so we can just skip right. No, it works perfectly. I'm going to start by saying good evening, and thank you to so many people. I'd like to say thank you to Deepak Chopra for inviting us to be here this evening and acknowledging what I know is a tremendous act of trust in inviting another speaker to come in the middle of a program. We met for the first time at dinner this evening, although we know each other by our work, and the truth is he really doesn't know what I'm going to say tonight. So it is a tremendous act of trust, and thank you very much. I appreciate you. Another example of how this man is pioneering new forums and new thought and new ways of looking at our world and our lives together, and I certainly acknowledge that. Thank you. And to all the people at the Chopra Center who have made this possible, and my wife Melissa for traveling. We've been on the road for about 5 weeks with a book tour. We haven't been home since last October, and I told her just 2 more programs. I promise, and we're on our way home. And to the Ford agency and the Ford Group and all the people there who have made it possible for me to be here this evening. So, and to all of you who invited me into your presence here. I have to ask the question, who has absolutely no idea who I am or what I'm going to talk about tonight? Oh, well, thank you for your honesty. Who is too shy to raise your hand and tell me you have no idea? Raise your hand. That's fine. That's fine. So I'll thank you for your trust in coming to a program you know absolutely nothing about and committing to an evening. I'm going to begin with a story to bring us into the material that we'll address this evening. And this is a true story. It's a story of 9 children. It came to me as I was writing the last phases of the book, The Isaiah Effect. 9 children who were involved in a program called the Special Olympics. And for those of you that may not be familiar with Special Olympics, it is designed for children so they may compete and participate in athletic competition in the presence of what some people perceive as disabilities that prevent them from participating in normally scheduled events. These 9 children came together. They quickly became friends, and they dined together, they slept together, they practiced and trained for these events together, and one day they found themselves competing against one another in the same event. And they were at the starting line of this event, and the starting gun went off, and under whatever means of locomotion they had, they began moving toward the end of this track. And there was one boy, one very special boy with Down syndrome. If you've ever been around any Down children, you know how powerful they are. And it was this boy who took just a moment, and rather than focusing on winning the race, he stopped in the middle of the track. And he turned around to look where his other teammates, his friends, were at. And what he saw was that one of his friends had not even made it off of the starting line, that he had fallen at the very beginning. And this boy turned around, he began walking back to that starting line. And as if it was on an unspoken cue, one by one, each of the other children stopped in the middle of their race, and they turned around and they walked back to the starting line. And they each knelt down and they picked up their friend and they held him by his arms and they locked their elbows together. And together they began to walk to the end of this track, because they said it made no difference for one of them to be there unless they were all there together. And that's a powerful story. Powerful story. Okay. Can you feel that feeling that just moved through the audience? Did you feel it? I'm feeling it right now. What does it feel like? What do you feel? What did you feel in your body? I felt there's a wave. It just went just like this. If I had come into this room and said to you, have that feeling, could you have done it? Perhaps. Maybe not. We are conditioned in our world to have our feelings in response to something else that happens to us in our world. What I'm going to say to you is that feeling is the reason that we're here this evening, perhaps this entire week. That feeling is a doorway to a power that lives within each of us. And it's a power that we know intuitively that our logic began to forget about 1,700 years ago. Now I'm going to ask you another survey question. Do you believe that there is a power that lives within us that can heal our bodies? Not impose a temporary healing, but heal our bodies. Bring a lasting peace to our world, to the governments and nations of our world. I'm not finished yet. And perhaps avert the greatest tragedies ever to face humankind. Do you believe that kind of power lives within us? And don't say yes just because you're in the seduction of spirit. I believe we have that power as well, and I believe that the information is out there. Our own science now has demonstrated through very good research that this power exists. I believe we need more information, more research, and we know enough now to perhaps move beyond the investigation to applying this power, to bring it to bear in our lives upon what are perhaps the greatest challenges ever to face humankind. The end of the 20th century, doesn't it feel great to say that? The end of the 20th century, some of the best minds, the best scientists and researchers in our world said to us that within the next 10 to 12 years, humankind may expect perhaps the greatest challenges ever recorded in our history. And they also said there's a good possibility that our external technology, the machines that we have built around us, will fail us in these challenges. And perhaps that is what it takes. I believe it does not take that, because we have an inner technology that we remember, that we know, that we're striving to breathe life into in the presence of one another. This inner technology, this power. Almost universally, ancient texts, ancient traditions remind us, as we go back far enough in history, that there is a wisdom that was given to the people of this earth. From the moment that the first man and the first woman walked this earth and raised their eyes to the heavens, there is a wisdom that has lived among us. And I believe we know that, we feel that. Where's that wisdom now? What happened to that wisdom? If such a power does exist, this inner technology, where is it today? Is it possible that something happened somewhere in our history that perhaps has left a gap in what we know, in the way we view our world, in the way we view our relationship to the cosmos, to this earth, and to one another? Maybe even the way we love. Well, the answer to that is yes, and I'm going to do this very briefly because Deepak did such a wonderful job sharing this with us tonight. What we know is that 1,700 years ago, tremendous amounts of information were taken from the open literature where we had always gone to know of these relationships. This information was edited from our most sacred texts. We knew it in our hearts, in our minds. We chose to reference this in the texts. When those texts were removed, there was no biblical text at this time. 1,700 years ago, there wasn't a Bible as we know it today. There was a loose collection, an assemblage of scrolls and documents and manuscripts, oral transmissions that had accumulated over tremendous amounts of time. When this information was edited, what was left was further reduced and simplified, and the information was rearranged, they say, the Roman texts say, so that it would make sense to the average person on the street, so that it would become accessible to us. We know, for example, at least 25 books were taken from what later became our Western Bible. Ladies, if you ever wonder why we don't hear more about women in the Bible, Mary, the birth of Mary, there's an entire gospel of the birth of Mary that tells us about her mother. Her mother was 81 years old when she gave birth to Mary and had been barren all of her life. Mary was 14 years old when she was betrothed to Joseph. There are no missing years of Jesus. Really, they're missing because they were taken out of the texts. And they are powerful texts because, for example, this text, the infancy of Jesus, tells the story of a young man coming into this world just the way that we have